Well, welcome to day 2, Movember, and today's talk is going to be on Healing the Father-Son Wound by John Lee. This morning I listened to this as I went for my morning walk, and I was just moved again. I remember being a young guy in recovery, and we were enthusiastic for this sort of content, and we would run men's retreats, and I did a whole retreat just based on a 2-cassette series of John's on healing the father-son wound. This talk embodies all the concepts that are in that tape that literally takes you through that process. And I want to talk a little bit about that now. We have the pleasure of John presenting a webinar in 2 weeks' time for Movember, and the details of that will be on my website and on the YouTube page, and I'll put the link in this video on YouTube for that event. So, healing the father-son wound. John talks about what happens to a man, and in the talk he certainly says mothers and daughters, sons and mothers, daughters and fathers can get some value from listening to this material. But as I focus on healing the father-son wound, he says that when a boy doesn't get that functional, engaging experience from dad, that there's a hole that's left inside of him. And that hole, as he mentions, is where the demons rush in. It's we go through our life forever trying to fill that hole. In the work that Eldredge built on, John Eldredge from Wild at Heart built on this pioneering work of not only John Lee, but John was mentored by Robert Bly, Sam Keen, James Hillman. These men back then were part of the mythopoetic men's movement, and they were speaking to a generation of men that had grew up being fathered by the Industrial Revolution men that were pulled away from family units, pulled out to long distances sometimes from home, where we ended up getting their temperament, not their time, because they were tired, exhausted, and for some families, not there. That we literally experience them as absent, and this absent father pandemic would be family. The divorce rate was so high. There was lots of single parent families, but there was also an absence where fathers were largely raised by a couple of generations of men who just provided and left all the emotional caregiving for their wives to give to the family. I know when my mother told me, I asked my mum in recovery, why didn't dad give me the sex talk? And she said, I begged him to give you the sex talk, but he refused. They grew up with this estrangement, this temperament. And so we learned to go to women for kindness and matters of the heart. And for men, they were largely competition. They led to this hole inside. So an absent father can be someone that wasn't there, and it can also be somebody that was there, but didn't turn up. My dad was absent, but he was in the chair after work every night. Not drunk, just not emotionally present. We need to look at issues of critical father. That if our body, thoughts, feelings, or behaviors were shamed by a dad, never good enough. I mean, Eldredge certainly talks, like so does John Lee, about how important it was to get our dad's blessing, that we were the apple of their eye, that we got that message, that we had what it takes to make it in life, right from the youngest age through that boyhood, cowboy, warrior, lover, king stage. We need that mentoring. If we don't get it, then largely when we go out into the world, we're going to be looking for it from the world itself, usually from things I'm just about to talk about. If we had a father that was neglectful, just not there, neglected physical touch, neglected intellectual intimacy, neglected our emotions, and didn't have a language to talk to us about feelings, didn't have that language to talk about their own feelings, then essentially in those key areas of growing up, we didn't get what we needed. And then that goes into that hole. And as John mentions in the tape, that's where those demons rush in. And those demons will largely, firstly, be addiction issues. And the main addiction issues that we're going to experience can be the main alcohol, drugs, nicotine, maybe not as much smoking anymore, vaping, probably for young men. And so with gambling, sex, food, more acceptable ones, work. I really loved out of the early men's literature where they talked about you could get halfway through your life and realize you got the ladder up against the wrong wall. And so if you're listening to this tape and you've identified you've got addiction issues, I just really support you to reach out for the help that you need, because one of the key criteria of addiction is denial. And generally it tells us that we've got to, we've the disease itself tells us that we don't have one. So if this tape inspires anybody to reach out and get some professional help, to look for some 12-step meetings for the addictions that they've got, even that Russell Brand book, Recovery, is a great start if you're battling with addictions to deal with that early childhood wound. Mental health issues. We, are in Movember right now. This is my Movember video, and it's for men's mental health, depression, anxiety, personality disorder, untreated trauma, developmental trauma issues that can come out as ADHD or bipolar. Look to a mental health professional to get some support to help you identify not just the symptoms that you've got, but where did this come from? What John says when he would treat men and counsel men is that they just didn't even know they were wounded by their dad. They could talk a lot about their mum, but they might spend 30 seconds talking about their dad and think they're done. And that generally comes from, initially, we disassociate and we repress and we suppress, and you don't miss something that just wasn't there. A lot of men grew up not only having an absent dad themselves or a neglectful or critical dad themselves, but they looked around and that's what they saw with their friends, so they didn't think there was anything wrong. I had no idea that really my dad's lack of being able to emotionally be there, intellectually be there for me. We only started hugging when I was in my 30s because my dad never got physical touch from his dad. My grandpa was a great guy. Grieving and angering is something that you'll find in the work of John's, all of his work, how important it is to get in touch with how we really feel about something and then have appropriate ways to anger it. John's work in Facing the Fire and the Anger Solution certainly talks about the rage that can come from having that hole in our heart, that wound from our father. And that's different than expressing healthy angering. The work of Pete Walker does a great job in his Tao of Fully Feeling, or Tao of Fully Feeling, to address this issue. But in John's work, Anger Solution, Facing the Fire, the ongoing deeper stories he tells in The Flying Boy or At My Father's Wedding go a long way to helping find a way to get this grief and anger out so you can start to heal that hole in our heart. A lot of the early men's retreats and men's gatherings, and they still continue to this day, are about initiation. Whether it be a secular men's group where they're talking about bringing boys up and being acknowledged in healthier ways, really being seen, adult men healing that wound from their own absent father, or Christian men's groups that really talk about being fathered by God. There's men's groups meeting everywhere, more than ever now, and it's about healing. So I just want to put forward in this video that if this has struck a chord, reach out, talk to people. Whether you go to a professional counselor, a men's group, or reach out for support, please don't just sit with this and think you've got to solve it yourself. So John's Healing the Father-Son Wound is available online. Please look it up. I hope you found this useful. And we've got a presentation of John coming up, and I'm really looking forward to hosting John in that. So look on our website for this. And the last message I usually give is be gentle with your heart. I look forward to seeing you all in tomorrow's video and in the Recovery Road. Take care.